I'm not the type of person to give out his name.
So I'm not going to. But what I will do after writing this down is tell you about the most terrifying experience of my life. The very thing that keeps me up at night, even to this day. And it happened in the early 2000s, back in my first year of college. Thinking about it now, I wish I never went. I'll tell it the way it lives in my head. The way it comes back when I'm driving at night and the road goes quiet.
It started ordinary enough that I didn't notice how careful I was being. Finals week had drained the campus of its personality. The halls of my dorm smelled like cardboard boxes and stale coffee. Everyone moving with that jittery relief that comes from knowing you're about to leave, but not quite being gone yet.
I folded clothes I hadn't worn all semester, wedged textbooks into a duffel I knew I wouldn't open until January, and unplugged things I didn't remember plugging in. I kept checking the time, not because I was late, but because I wanted the night to arrive already.
Going home always felt more real once the sun went down, like the distance mattered more. Ashley was waiting by the curb when I hauled my last bag out. She had a backpack slung over one shoulder and that look people get when they're relieved they don't have to find another ride. I'd promised her weeks earlier that I'd take her part of the way home. It was no trouble. I was heading through Nevada anyway, cutting south before turning east. My Oldsmobile was already packed tight, the suspension sagging just enough to remind me how old it was. The car had been my grandfather's. The interior smelled like vinyl dust, and something faintly sweet that never quite went away.
The engine turned over with a tired confidence, the kind that made you trust it, because it had never failed before, not because it couldn't.
We pulled away from campus as the last of the daylight drained out of the sky.
The first hour felt like every other long drive I'd ever taken.
The radio faded in and out as we left the city, stations dissolving into static between patches of late-night talk and music I didn't recognize.
Ashley sat quietly, watching the lights thin and then disappear altogether. Once the desert took over, the darkness pressed closer to the windshield.
The road became a narrow ribbon of reflected paint, the shoulders swallowed by sand and rock. We stopped for gas farther out than I planned. The gauge had dipped lower than I liked, and the next town was a gamble.
The station sat alone under buzzing fluorescent lights, a square of white in an ocean of black.
The building looked permanently closed, even though the pump still worked. Windows coated in grime, door locked with a handwritten sign taped crookedly inside. While the tank filled, I noticed him standing near the edge of the light.
He hadn't been there when we put in, or at least I didn't think so. He was thin in a way that didn't look healthy, his clothes hanging loose and stiff with dirt.
In one hand, he held a brown bag that sagged at the bottom, the paper darkened and soft like it had been damp once and never dried properly.
Ashley didn't say anything, but I felt her attention shift.
There was a tension in the air that had nothing to do with the cold. The man watched us without moving closer, like he wanted to say something but was too afraid to. When the pump clicked off, I capped the tank and told myself not to stare.
He slowly approached as I reached for the driver's door.
Up close, the smell reached me before anything else. A sour, sweet rot that didn't belong in open air. The man asked me if he could get a lift.
That I could drop him off a mile up the highway, so he didn't have to walk at Kiss that far.
I hesitated long enough to feel foolish for hesitating. People got stranded out here all the time. It was cold. It was late.
I told myself that my unease was just the desert playing tricks, the way isolation amplifies everything.
Ashley's expression had tightened, her body angled away from him. But she didn't stop me when I unlocked the rear door and told the man to hop in. The moment he climbed in, the car changed. The smell filled the cabin, thick and clinging. The springs creaked under his weight as he settled directly behind me, the back wedged between his feet.
The door shut with a finality I hadn't felt before. We pulled back onto the highway, the station lights shrinking in the mirror until they vanished completely.
The dog nurse rushed in to replace them. I became acutely aware of the narrowness of the road, the emptiness beyond the shoulder.
Every sound inside the car seemed louder.
The man shifted constantly, muttering under his breath, his words indistinct but urgent.
I could see his reflection in the rearview mirror, his eyes never quite still.
The knife appeared without ceremony.
1 second, his hands were empty. The next, the blade hovered close enough that I could see the nicks along its edge. He pressed it forward just enough to make the point clear, the metal catching a sliver of dashboard light.
My grip on the steering wheel tightened until my hands ached. He made it understood what would happen if we didn't comply.
He didn't need to raise his voice. His calm, eerie words let us know that he was serious. He talked to himself, arguments and reassurances tangled together. his free hand twitching as if responding to someone else entirely. But what he said put Ashley and I both in therapy for years after. He said that he was homeless because of people like us.
Said we took everything from him. We were the cause of his starvation. Ashley just sobbed in fear.
I sat there almost crying myself, yet throwing up from what he said next. Placing his knife blade against Ashley's cheek, he'd say out loud and proud that he's eaten people before, that he was fresh of a man's body, that he had just run out of meat.
The road stretched on, mile after mile of nothing. He continued telling us about hunger, about his craving for more than animal.
There was a pride in it, twisted and unsettling.
I couldn't believe what I was hearing.
Was hoping he was kidding.
But he wasn't. He was a cannibal.
The idea felt unreal, like a story you hear and dismiss because it belongs somewhere else.
Out here, with the darkness pressing against the windows, it felt terrifyingly possible. He directed me off the highway eventually, down a service road barely visible in the headlights. The tires crunched over gravel, the sound too loud in the silence. The farther we went, the more the desert closed in, low hills rising like crouched shapes just beyond the beam of light. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might pop.
Then he made a mistake. It was clear that Freak wasn't right in the head.
Obviously, he wasn't thinking.
He told me to stop near a cluster of rocks, insisting he needed to check something ahead.
In his agitation, he shifted the knife away, reached for the door, and stepped out before I'd fully processed what was happening.
The second his feet hit the ground, instinct took over.
I slammed the accelerator to the floor. The Oldsmobile lurched forward, engine roaring. Gravel sprayed behind us as we fishtailed back toward the road. I didn't look back.
I didn't slow down until the speedometer crept past what felt safe.
Ashley was braced against the door, her breathing sharp and uneven, but she didn't scream, just cried.
The desert blurred into a tunnel of darkness and light.
It was kind of a blur after we left him standing out there.
I don't even remember how we made it back to the highway.
Just that my car was bouncing like it had hydraulics.
We were pretty much cutting across the desert, running over cactus as we did.
The whole time I was trying to calm Ashley, who was very upset over the whole situation.
We didn't stop until we saw patrol lights in the distance. An officer had someone pulled over, a miracle of red and blue cutting through the black. The relief was so sudden it left me dizzy. We pulled over hard, hands shaking as we tried to explain to the officer what had happened, without falling apart. The officer approached while trying to calm us down.
I admit I was very hysterical, fast talking, out of breath,
tears in my eyes.
After a few minutes of gathering ourselves, me and Ashley told everything we could about the creep.
That we thought we were just going to drive the guy a mile up the road and drop him off.
And how he pulled out a knife and threatened to kill and eat us. And how he said he's killed and tasted people before. The officer abruptly cutting me off towards the end of explanation, him complaining about a horrid smell, reminded of the man's bag.
He left in my back seat, so I informed the policeman about it. We handed over the bag the sicko left behind, neither of us willing to touch it for long.
The smell had grown worse, as if the heat inside the car had awakened something dormant. When the cop opened it, even he recoiled.
Inside was a human hand, skin grey and mottled, fingers gnawed down to bone in places.
It was half-eaten.
Unfortunately, we were taken to the station. Statements taken under harsh lights.
Questioned over and over about the severed hand.
Thankfully, our story was believed, since the body the hand belonged to, what was left of it, had been found a few days prior, giving weight to our story. The downside to what happened to me and Ashley is that the man was never found, nor did they know who he was. I made it home eventually.
I hugged my family tightly, but slept with the lights on for weeks. Even now, when I drive at night and see a lone gas station glowing in the distance, I feel that same tightening in my chest.
I remember how stupid it was to open the door for a stranger, something I will never do again.